What is better than 2 armfuls of books? Oh no, baby, it's not a riddle. The answer is nothing. There is nothing better than 2 armfuls of books. Okay. There is nothing better than lovely spouse Harry and 2 armfuls of books. Okay, on a much more serious note, how do we do this? How can you still see them? Oh wait, it's because they're actually bigger than my torso and head put together. That's why you can still see them. Okay. It's Leanne and welcome back to my channel. Yeesh, I feel like I need to rearrange myself now. That was hot work. We are here today, in case you hadn't already guessed, to do a book haul. A large book haul. A sensual book haul. A book haul that makes you feel good. Okay, actually the reason that we're here today to do a book haul is because Harry said get these off of the floor. I'm not sure if that's because he kept tripping over them or because it kind of looked like I was going to move out and make a hut in the woods just made of paper. But either way, I have been instructed that it is time to remove the obstacle from the floor space. And I am nothing if not very occasionally obedient. So here we are. We're going to talk about everything that's in this stack because clearly some choices were made, but also some pre-orders came in, some publishers were very generous, and some lovely people sent along some things to make me smile. But before I get started, I have some news. I feel like I've been so full of exciting announcements recently that you're just going to expect one every video from now on. I'm sorry, I can't live up to that. But I do have one for today, because before we get into the bulk of my book haul, I get to announce a read-along. It has been such a long time since I got to do a read-along on my channel, and this one is so exciting because not only is the book amazing, but also it's happening next week. I'm not going to keep you guys in suspenders any longer. The book that I am hosting a read-along for is Honesty and Lies by Eloise Williams. This one takes place in the winter of 1601 and it follows Honesty as she arrives for her very first day in London town. Honesty can't quite believe that she's got to London, but here she is through sheer tenacity, and she is determined to get a job for herself where she can show her true worth. But literally within minutes of her feet hitting the London streets, she bumps into Alice. And Alice is an interesting girl with an interesting tale because she is carrying precious materials for none other than Queen Elizabeth I. Intrigued, Honesty follows Alice all the way to the Queen's court, where both of them are very quickly hired as maids. But while Honesty wants to excel and wants to move up the ranks and show what she's made of, Alice just wants to hide because Alice has a very dangerous secret that might just affect them both. So if this fiendishly delicious little plate of Honesty and Lies sounds up your alley, you can get your copy right now. The book has literally just released. It will be in all of your favourite bookshops. The read-along will be running from the 20th to the 26th of October on all of my social media. You will be able to read the chapters along with me, and if you do have kids or little ones in your life, there will be plenty of prompts to get you chatting with them. And on the 26th, I will be finishing with a live show with the wonderful Eloise Williams. I will be interviewing her, talking a little bit about her writing process, and the winners of the giveaway that I am going to be hosting for this one will be announced on that live show. More details about the giveaway for this one will be announced over on my Instagram at the start of the read-along, so keep your eyes peeled over there. There will be one UK copy and one international copy, so there is a chance for everyone to get their hands on this. And yeah, I hope you guys are as excited as I am. Thank you so much to the wonderful people at Firefly Press for sending this one along and for letting me host. I am just got maps and everything, guys. I mean, what more do you want? Alright, so fun read-along details out of the way. It is time to delve into the stacks. And as usual in my book hauls, there's something in here for everyone. No matter what genre you like, there will be something to your taste. The first thing that I'm going to show you is a book that I am just not going to talk very much about because I feel like I've already gushed about it on every social platform that I have access to. And let's be realistic, it's me, so I'm probably not going to stop anytime soon. When I like something, I really like something. I actually listened to this book on audiobook and I just had to have a physical copy. Did I break my book buying ban to purchase a copy of this book? Yes. Do I feel bad about it? Absolutely not. Does my bank account feel bad about it? Yes. But that's okay, because it's so freaking beautiful. This is, of course, the hardback copy of I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jeanette McCurdy, and I had to have it, you guys. I love everything about this cover, and I'm not just talking about the controversial nature of the photography on it. I mean, like, the composition, the colours, the fact that it's already kind of pre-faded so it looks like a vintage book, the absolutely stunning buttercream yellow that is under the cover. Everything about this book is amazing, even the fact that it's already covered in cat hair. I mean, realistically, it's been in my house for more than 3 minutes, so of course it's covered in cat hair. I have synopsis'd this so many times at you guys already that you could probably recite it in your sleep, so I'm not going to do it again. I will instead just link you up here and down below to the vlog in which I read this and it blew my mind, and I'll stop talking about it. Yeah. The next one up on my list is one that I did purchase for myself in direct contravention of my book buying ban. But technically this one is not my fault, it's your fault. Or rather, it's the fault of one of my absolutely lovely viewers who told me that this existed. And in doing so, also alerted me to the fact that the UK cover for this one is gross and the US cover is far superior. And how often does that happen? This is the US edition and I do not feel guilty. Well, I feel a little bit guilty, but not too guilty. And the book is Reluctant Immortals by Gwendolyn, Kiste. You see how floppy that was? I didn't even want to stand up. That might be a problem for some people, but it's not a problem for me. Everything about this book is so up my alley, and you will immediately know why as soon as I tell you anything about it. This one is set in 1967 in Los Angeles, and it follows two women, Bertha and Lucy, who are now undead, very, very reluctant immortals. Both of them have survived some very toxic men in their past, shall we say? Is that how we'll put it? Is that how we're describing it? Some very toxic men. Bertha Mason has survived Mr. Rochester and Lucy has survived Count Dracula. And both of them just want to move on with their lives. Thank you very freaking much. But when Rochester and Dracula make an unexpected return to the Haight-Ashbury neighbourhood of Los Angeles, Bertha and Lucy are forced to deal with them once and for all. So obviously I have a thing for the heroines of famous horror novels getting their chance to have their day in the sunshine, as it were. I mean, not sunshine if Dracula was involved. Because this one clearly follows in the tradition of one of my very favourite books that you guys, you know what it is. You did. It's The Strange Case of the Alchemist Daughter by Theodora Goss. You knew it was gonna happen. And I'm frankly loving this trend. I need more of it now. And speaking of retellings, the next thing on my stack is a gender-bent version of Sleeping Beauty. A gender-bent queer version of Sleeping Beauty. This one is The Bone Spindle by Leslie Vedder. And I'm not gonna lie, beautiful as the UK edition is, it once again is just, it's not as beautiful as this one. What's going on, guys? This one was recommended to me by my excellent friend Kiste, who has impeccable taste. You can find her at Melbs Reads over on Bookstagram if you would like a reader's advisory post to find your next favourite read. I don't know how she does it, but she's never let me down yet. This one follows Fee, who is a treasure hunter. One day she pricks her finger on a spindle and she awakens the ghost of Prince Briar. He believes that all he needs is a single kiss to undo the centuries-long sleeping curse that he has been under. And after some begging, Fee agrees to help him, but she cannot do so on her own. And so she joins forces with Shane, who is an axe-wielding huntswoman, and they head together into the Forest of Thorns. How can I force it quicker into my eyeballs? Next up, I have got a little bundle of non-fiction. Starting with Men Who Hate Women by Laura Bates. Laura Bates is of course quite famous for Everyday Sexism, which is very much a feminism primer. If you haven't read a lot in the area of feminism, or you're looking to introduce somebody to the idea of sexism and misogyny and how the oppression of women is like a systemic and systematic thing in our society, then this is definitely the book that you're looking for. And this one is Laura attempting to look at the idea of men's rights activists, of incels, the idea of pickup artists and organisations like Men Going Their Own Way. And as it says on the back, it traces how effectively their ideas have been smuggled into our collective consciousness via trolls, the media, celebrities and politicians to emerge in our schools, workplaces and everyday life. And while I think this is going to be an incredibly difficult and probably somewhat depressing read that I'm going to have to be in the right mental headspace for, I also think that it's a pretty important read. So here it is. Shame that it has to exist, but I'm glad that it does. And the other two books that I have are more books in the 404 Inklings series. The first one is Whatever Next on Adult Adoptees and Identity, and the second one is They Came to Slay the Queer Culture of D&D. The 404 Inklings series are described as big ideas, small books. Each of them are incredibly niche. The ones that I have read before are The Appendix, which is a book about transmasculine joy, and Love That Journey for Me, which is a book about the queer revolution that Schitt's Creek kicked off. And these two constitute another two very niche topics that I am interested in. As I mentioned when I picked this one up, the queer culture of D&D was something that pretty much saved me as a younger kid, and I'm very interested in reading more about it. I didn't get to play much D&D, I mostly got to watch it from afar, but the fact that we were able to have queer relationships with characters in these Dungeons and Dragons games, and it made perfect sense, was something that just changed my life as a younger kid. I feel like queerness and D&D come hand in hand, so I'm really excited to read this. It already kind of feels weirdly nostalgic. And the second of those books, Whatever Next, looks at the adoptee's experience. So as a person who is adopted, I am always fascinated to hear other people's adoption stories, but more often than not, the adoption stories that are in the media and shows that we consume are often very happy adoptions. Quite a lot of the time, the parents are framed as saviours, particularly if those adoptions are interracial, and very little gets published from the adoptee's perspective, particularly if that adoption was not exactly favourable or comfortable or happy. So again, I'm super excited for this one, although to be honest, I feel like this could have an entire series all of its own. Next up in the stack, we have a mini stack, and it is entirely comprised of dark academia. 'Tis the damn season and all that. So first up in this stack, I am so excited to have The Atlas Paradox by Olivie Blake. This is a proof copy that has been in my house for a couple of weeks and I have not managed to get to it yet. In case you couldn't tell, I'm a little bit frustrated by that experience. But that's okay, because I am going to get there. This is of course the follow-up to The Atlas 6, so I can't tell you very much about this one, but I can tell you about this one. The Atlas 6 follows 6 magicians who have been chosen to take part in the initiation to the Alexandrian Society. The Alexandrian Society is a secret society, of course, because what else would we expect from a dark academia, wherein all of the members take a vow to protect all of the arcane knowledge that exists in the world, all of the lost arcane knowledge in some cases. This initiation happens every decade. The candidates are hand-selected by a man called Atlas Blakely, and they are forced to spend one entire year together. But only 5 of them will be selected, and one of them will be eliminated. I just recently talked about this in a tops and bottoms, but I absolutely love this one. It is so pretentious. For me, it was somewhere between the atmosphere of The Secret History, but the like machinations and backbiting secrets of like Gossip Girl, and it just hit perfectly, even though I know, you know, it's not for everybody. So I am frankly absolutely delighted that there is another entire installment of a bunch of lies. Next up, we of course have Babel by R.F. Kuang. What self-respecting dark academia stack would not have Babel in it this year? Do tell me. And before anybody asks, this is not any of the stunning special editions of Babel that has been released. This is just the standard old, I walked in and picked it up in a bookshop edition. Babel is one of those books that has as its synopsis this tiny, tiny little thing which tells you almost nothing. And everybody who I speak to who has read Babel is like, just start reading it, because whatever you think it's about, it's really not. So all I really know about this one is that it is dark academia, but it is dark academia that critiques not the classics, but translations of the classics and other things. And it looks at how translation has contributed to things like colonialism and oppression, all in a dark academia setting with creepy characters who you can't really trust. Also, have I mentioned it's set in the 30s, which I feel like is just peak dark academia times. So in case I was far too vague for you, the synopsis says, an act of translation is always an act of betrayal. Oxford, 1836. The city of dreaming spires. It is the centre of all knowledge and progress in the world, and at its heart is Babel, Oxford University's prestigious Royal Institute of Translation, the tower from which all of the power of the empire flows. Orphaned in Canton and brought to England by a mysterious guardian, Robin Swift thought Babel a paradise, until it became a prison. But can a student stand against an empire? It's so shiny! And as with everything else in the stack, I want to put all of the books I am currently reading down and read this instead. Next up, I have a cheeky hardback edition of a book that I already own. And in fact, not only do I already own this book, but I already really like the paperback edition that I have. I'm not even replacing an ugly edition with a pretty edition. I'm just buying another pretty edition, and I'm mostly not sorry about it. Well, I'm a little bit sorry about it because I had to get the US hardback edition because the UK hardback edition just doesn't exist anymore. You know how I hate the hype bandwagon, and usually that's fine, but occasionally it means I miss out on pretty things, you know? The book that I am talking about is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is one of the 2 books that my Patreon book club is currently reading, and I'm loving it so far, which is good because the covers making me so excited I might need my inhaler. The covers of this book are just all beautiful, and I love this. I love the paperback edition, but look at this, guys. Look at the hardback edition. Look at this pretty baby. It is the beautiful Mexican black king snake, and I love it. I don't, know if it will make me long-term happy, but it currently makes me incredibly happy to hold it in my hand. So in case you don't know anything about this book, this is about Alex Stern. She is a dropout, a complete and utter Bernie dropout. When she was a little bit younger, she fell into some very bad company and made some pretty terrible choices, which led all the way up to a death. But now Alex is in a mysteriously much better position. She is somehow a freshman at Yale, and she is planning on putting everything in her past behind her. All of those bad memories banished. But you see, there is one catch. Alex has been tasked with monitoring all of the secret societies at Yale. And the secret societies at Yale are a little more magical than everybody thinks that they are. And that's all she has to say about that. If you would like to read this book along with us, or The Ruin of Kings, which is our other book club pick for this 2-month period, then you can find links to my Patreon down below. And finally, in my little dark academia stack, we have got Bunny by Mona Awad. I cannot say this title now without laughing, because every single person who I talk to about this book has completely different opinions on it, and also gives you a completely different synopsis about what it's really about. Apparently, no matter what you think is really happening in this book, it ain't. And it is apparently not only a dark academia book, but also just a straight up horror book. So I think the safest thing is just to read you the synopsis, and then we can all learn together. Samantha Heather Mackey is an outsider in her small, highly selective MFA program at Warren University. In fact, she is utterly repelled by the rest of her fiction writing cohort, a clique of unbearably twee rich girls who call each other Bunny. But then the bunnies issue her with an invitation, and Samantha finds herself inexplicably drawn to their front door, across the threshold, and down their rabbit hole. And you know what? I done just noticed on the back that it also says that it's part fairy tale. So what is exactly going on in this book, guys? In fact, you know what? Don't tell me. I'm gonna read it myself, and I will come back with my own conclusions. You are a tricksy bunny, but I shall pin you down. Next up, I have a couple of books that have been sent to me by publishers. The first one being A Girlhood. This is subtitled A Letter to My Transgender Daughter by Carolyn Hayes, and this one was sent to me by the lovely people at Book Break. This one is essentially a love letter to Carolyn Hayes' daughter, who very, very early on in her life came to her family and said, I am not a boy, I am a girl, and I want you to call me a girl. So Carolyn and her family went, absolutely, if that is what you want, that is what we will do. They shifted pronouns, they changed names, they changed outward appearance, and then one day someone anonymously reported them to the Department of Children and Families. Faced with seemingly insurmountable obstacles in her Republican state, Carolyn decided that this was no longer the best place for her family, and she uprooted them and completely moved them across the country. And this is her story of how that happened as a record for her daughter, and I am just so excited to read it, even though I think that it is going to be utterly heartbreaking and is definitely going to challenge my faith in humanity a little bit. Next up, Book Break delighted my witchy heart by sending along a finished copy of Wildcard. This one is a non-fiction book that I would describe as a cosy chat with a friend over some tarot cards. It essentially explores what tarot cards are, why you might want to read them, the people who believe in tarot as an astrological phenomena versus the people who use tarot as like a mindfulness exercise, what the lore is behind all of the cards in the tarot deck, why they are the way they are, and how to interpret them so that they are useful for you. Whether you are like me, someone who's a little bit obsessed with tarot and who collects loads of pretty decks, or whether you're either just starting out or just interested in tarot as like a fun activity to do with your day, this book is perfect. It has lovely illustrations in it, and it breaks down each card in just a couple of pages in a really easy to understand way. Even looks at some pop culture references behind tarot and behind each of the cards. It's a lot of fun. It just doesn't feel like your head is getting crammed with information because you're having such a good time doing it. Plus this is just a very satisfying book. Just very nice to hold, kind of like tarot cards. I like the way they've done that. And next up, this time from Serpent's Tail, I have The Green Man of Eschwood Hall by Jacob Kerr. The camera is just absolutely not doing this one justice. The book itself has the feeling of craft paper, and this illustration is so intricate and so creepy. There are so many tiny little elements to find in it. Also, can we just take a second to look at the end papers and the perfect hobbity forest green that is this book. So this one is set in 1962 and it follows 13-year-old Izzy, who lives at Eschwood Hall, but she lives in the servants' quarters, definitely not upstairs in the sprawling mansion. She's fairly neglected by her parents and she doesn't attend school, which means her time is mostly unaccounted for, and so she spends it wherever she likes, exploring the village, exploring the grounds of the house, and exploring the forest just beyond them, because Izzy hears tell of some very tantalising tales in that forest. And as a girl who is not particularly risk-averse, she would quite like to meet the thing that lives in those forests. That thing, of course, being the mysterious green man. This one to me feels really perfect for late fall, early winter, disappearing into a delicious dark cold forest that could swallow you up. Oh, and jumping back to the theme of astrology just for a minute, one of my most anticipated pre-orders landed on my doorstep the other day and I screamed. If you hang around my Instagram for more than 5 minutes, then you will no doubt catch me reposting some of the astrology memes that the Pulp Girls post. Brianna and Kaylee are best friends and sisters who are obsessed with astrology and are absolutely amazing artists. The stuff that they post is just absolutely perfect for my aesthetic. It's spooky with a cute side in it, it's a little bit sassy. And together they have published this book. This is Astrology for the Cosmic Soul, and the front illustration is very indicative of their style. This is a modern guide to the zodiac, so just like Wild Child took you through the tarot, this is introducing you to astrology and why you might want to be interested in astrology and where the idea of astrology comes from and what we can do with it. Not only is every single page of this book absolutely beautiful, but it's also absolutely jam-packed with easy ways to unpick astrology. If you're like me and you came to astrology a little bit late, then you might be confused about sun and moon signs and how to work out your birth chart and also what to do with all of it and why you should care. And they definitely explain it all in not only a really like conversational, informative way, but also in a really funny way. Like I say, this is completely non-spawn. I bought this myself. I just absolutely love these girls and I'm really passionate about what they do and I'm so happy to see them succeed. Next up, in typical me fashion, we have another one of my pre-orders and it is The It Girl by Ruth Ware. This is Ruth Ware's latest standalone thriller, and I am hoping, as with all of Ruth Ware's other thrillers, that it is the equivalent of candy floss for my brain. I always describe Ruth Ware's books as the thriller that you never knew that you needed. Her writing is very pacey, her books are very page-turny, and her plots are just devilish enough, just fiendish enough that you mostly won't be able to guess the conclusion to them, but also, if you're like me, you probably mostly won't care. Because I don't really go to Ruth Ware's books for the kind of thriller plot that makes me go, oh my god! I go to Ruth Ware's books for the kind of thriller that I can read in the middle of the night when I have insomnia and I'm just having a delightfully good time, but then when I put it on my shelf later, I don't need to think about it anymore. So from what I can gather, this one is about Hannah. 10 years ago, Hannah found April's body, and it was her testimony that sent April's supposed killer to prison. But now, all of these years later, Hannah has reason to believe that perhaps she was wrong. Maybe her testimony wasn't entirely accurate. And if that means that April's killer is not in prison, then could it possibly be somebody that Hannah knows? I really, really hope that it is. You know, like I hope that it is. I hope that it's somebody Hannah knows, and I hope that horrible things happen, and that I can read it at 2 AM when I can't sleep and not think about it ever again. Next up, I have 2 books that were sent to me by the lovely Aimer. Thank you so much for sending things from my wish list. Every time you guys do that, it just warms my heart so much. Both of these, on several trips to the bookshop, have I looked at close to the end of my adventure and gone, I cannot get another book. The stack is big enough, I have committed enough, you should not have done that for this trip. And now here they are. The first of those is A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers, and every time I look at this cover, it makes me laugh. This one is about Dorothy Daniels. She is a food critic and she is fairly famous. She had one of those beautiful idyllic childhoods where she lived on a farm and they grew all of their own food and then cooked it themselves, and she endlessly tells people this story about her over and over again to make them think that she's a lovely person. Actually, Dorothy has some secrets that she's quite ready to talk about now. And one of those secrets is that she eats people. No spoilers! It's on the back of the book. In fact, it says, but beware, her story just might make you wonder how your lover would taste sautéed with shallots and mushrooms and deglazed with a little red wine. Snarky female serial killer with a little Hannibal Lecter predilection? Yes, please. And then the second book that Aimer sent along is Sundial by Catriona Ward. How beautiful is this cover? Camera is not doing it justice. It's bronze foiling. It's stunning. Now, one of the reasons that I was always like, oh, I don't know about this one is because I read Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward and I didn't like it. Not just like a little bit didn't like it, but really didn't like it, and actually there were a few problematic things in there that just made me really uncomfortable, and so I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about another offering from her, even though I really, really liked her writing and the way that she constructed sentences. And so I am delighted to be able to give this one a shot. But the synopsis of this one is just so very me. So this one is about Rob, who fears for both of her daughters. She has Callie, who is a very, very odd little girl. She collects bones and secrets. And she has Annie, who she is frequently afraid Callie is going to do something to. Rob sees something in Callie, a darkness that reminds her of a world that she ran away from, which exists deep in the Mojave Desert in a little town called Sundial. On the other hand, Callie is beginning to be afraid of her mother because she is now telling her about this mysterious town called Sundial and all of the horrible things that happen there that fascinate Callie. But as much as she's desperate to get to Sundial, she's not entirely sure that Rob is telling her the truth. Say it with me, guys. Creepy children. I'm excited. And now that I've got to this point in the stack, I realise that I lied to you. I do actually have one more non-fiction, and it is If I Don't Make It, I Love You, Survivors in the Aftermath of School Shootings by Amy Archer and Lauren Kleiman. The subject of school shootings, of mass shootings and gun control in the States absolutely boggles me, and I think because it's such an alien concept to me living here in the UK, where it's just not a prevalent issue at all most of the time. Because of that, I have read quite a lot of non-fiction about this topic. And of course, a huge piece of news right now in America is the trial of Nicholas Cruz, the Parkland shooter. He was a teenager who killed 17 of his fellow classmates. And in fact, the foreword of this book is by Fred Gutenberg, whose daughter Jamie Gutenberg died in the Parkland tragedy. So when I heard that this book was in the works, I pre-ordered it pretty much immediately. And as a piece of non-fiction, section that focuses on school shootings, this one is really, really unique. This is not really a history of school shootings, nor is it an issue of the sociological impacts and causes of school shootings, but instead it is literally a collected together narrative of school shootings from the point of view of different people who've been impacted by them. So for example, the first essay in here is written by Rhonda Hart, whose daughter Kimberly was killed in the Santa Fe shooting, and her essay is a collected together composite of all of the tweets that she posted from the minute that she found out that Kimberly was dead all the way through to the present day. It chronicles the impact of Kimberly's life and the impact of the way that she lost it on her family and her community. And there are a few other graphic elements to this book. This one is a comic which was drawn by a survivor of a school shooting, but the bulk of this book is interviews that Amy Archer and Lauren Kleinman had with parents and other kids who were in the school at the time and friends of these kids, and kids who now go to these schools where these tragedies are these huge legacies and who have to live through the memory of that even though they themselves were not there at the time. I have started to read this and it is deeply upsetting in a way that I didn't expect it to be, considering I am somebody who consumes a lot of true crime and thus a lot of victim narratives. There's just something about the mass senselessness of this that is so difficult to read about. It's an extremely necessary book, and I think that if this is something that you feel that you could read about, it's definitely worth picking up. But again, all of the trigger warnings, please make sure that you're in the right place when you do it. And yeah, I'll definitely cover this one in tops and bottoms as soon as I have finished it. Now, my last two books are pre-order hardbacks that have only just come in, one of which I am absolutely sure you're going to be like, yeah, that was no surprise coming from Leanne, and the other one might make you lift a couple of eyebrows. So I'm just gonna start with that one and get it out of the way. This is Fairy Tale by Stephen King. I have read quite a few Stephen King books in my time, including it. And while I think it is undeniable that he is a master storyteller, I think it is also undeniable that some of his books exhibit some pretty problematic themes. I do think a lot of those themes have got much better as he has got older, and that he is showing that he is educating himself, but I still agree that that does not make his earlier views okay, nor does it necessarily mean that none of them are going to be present in this book. And when I read it, if there's stuff in there that I don't enjoy, you guys will be the first to know. So this one is about Charlie Reed. His mum was killed in a hit and run accident, and his father, in his grief, turned to alcohol and left Charlie pretty much on his own to look after himself. Because of this, Charlie knows that he has to be as independent as he can, that he needs money of his own, and so he goes and takes himself and gets a job. The job that he gets, however, is for a man named Howard Bowditch, who lives in a great big old mansion on a hill. Howard is a recluse. Nobody really goes near him, and he really doesn't care to go near anybody else. And so when Howard dies suddenly, Charlie is shocked to discover that Howard has left him two things. One, his dog Radar, and two, his garden shed. But in that garden shed, there is a portal to another world that only Howard knows about. A world where fairy tales happen, a world that is in perpetual turmoil and at war with itself. And Charlie, with nothing left in the real world, decides that that world looks much better than his. Regardless of what we think about Stephen King, however, this cover is absolutely beautiful, and underneath the dust jacket there was a surprise. It's sexy, right? It's sexy. Anyway, we go read it and then I'm going to tell you exactly what I think about it. And now the last book that I've got, which I think will come as absolutely no surprise to anybody, is of course A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson in the beautiful new reproduced hardback version. In case you don't know anything about A Dowry of Blood, it was originally published by Nyx Publishing. It looked like this. You may recognise it from its previous cover. Nyx Publishing is a really small independent publisher in England, but when this book went absolutely crazy on social media, It was picked up by Orbit and now it has this gorgeous edition with these blood red sprayed edges. I actually have this one on my Kindle with the original cover, and I had dipped my toes into it once or twice, but I'm doing really badly with reading on my Kindle right now, and I know that if I just leave that book there, it might not get read for quite a long time, and I am quite eager to read it because this is yet another feminist retelling of a horror classic, and this one focuses on the original Brides of Dracula. This one follows Constanta, who at the very beginning of this novel is lying dying in the streets of her village. In her last moments, she looks up and she sees a mysterious figure over the top of her. She knows that there's something not quite right about this man, that he moves in a way that no human man should move, but that is the last thing that she remembers. When she wakes up, however, she discovers that that man is of course none other than Count Dracula, and that he has plans to change her from this medieval peasant into a woman who is fit to be the bride of an undying king. But Constanta slowly realises that she is not the only bride that Count Dracula wants, and as he starts to pull other young women into his web, Constanta realises that there is a deep evil here, and that maybe the only other people who she can rely on are the rival brides that Dracula has brought to her door. Now, if you have seen the original cover of this anywhere, then you probably know that this is quite famously a queer poly romance. And as I just recently asked on Instagram for your recommendations for poly romances, particularly queer ones, I was delighted when my pre-order of this lovely hardback edition arrived in the post. Just cross all of your fingers and toes for me that it works and that I love it and that I don't now have 2 copies of it when I might not love it. Yeah, no, we're not accepting that possibility. I am going to enjoy it. We will manifest good things for me and this creepy book. So that's it, guys. That was everything that I had to show you. She says like there weren't enough books here to fill up an entire bookcase. As always, guys, please let me know if you have read and loved any of the books that I've shown here today, or if you have any recommendations based on the things that I have picked up, if there's anything else that you think should be on that wish list. And of course, if you hated any of the books that I mentioned here today, then don't forget to tell me about that too, because we like opinions here. Don't forget to pick up your very own copy of Honesty and Lies by Eloise Williams for our read-along. Remember, it starts on the 20th of October and you can find more details down below in my socials. If you enjoyed this video and you're new here, please consider sticking around so you can find out what I thought about some of the things that are in the stack. And if you have enjoyed this video, then don't forget to hit the thumbs up because it really does help my channel. And I will speak to all of you guys really soon. Bye! I'm not gonna lie, guys, I did the entire second half of this video watching a cat with a cone on her head walk into pieces of furniture, and I really shouldn't laugh because she looks so sad, but it's so funny.